Hey everyone, and welcome to another Yogi Misfit session. My name is Danny Pomploon, and I'm your host. Welcome to session 41. I'm actually super excited about this session and session 42 coming up. So one of my previous students who took my teacher training gave me the idea of doing two podcasts, one part where someone had taken teacher training, or the before of teacher training and then the after of teacher training. So in this episode, I've got Katina on the show, and she is an online blogger. She's got a blog called On Adulting. And we got to talk a little bit about what her experience was before, what her expectations were, what she was scared about, all that fun stuff. And then you'll get the follow-up in a couple weeks from what her experience was after teacher training. So I've got the before and after. I'd also like to share that we're now available on Spotify. So if you are on Spotify, you can search the Yogi Misfit sessions, or you can just search under Danny Pomploon and you can find us there. And of course, if you like the show, please leave a review on iTunes. As always, I'd like to thank my friends over at SF Yoga Magazine just for being such big supporters. Without further ado, here is this week's episode. Hey, Katina, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
What's going on?
Nothing. Ready for a Friday.
Aren't we all?
Yes, literally.
I've talked about this before, but I'm a big fan of Mondays. I know, I'm that person. I'm that guy. But Mondays are great because they're like a fresh start. You get to like kind of wipe the slate clean from everything you did before in the week or the week before anyway, and you get a nice cool fresh start. I love it anyway. But
yeah, no, I've actually found that too, especially since moving out here. I feel like Mondays are my peaceful days because they're all about me.
Yeah.
And what I want to do. I don't schedule any meetings on those days. So it's really nice to start off the week that way.
And it's nice to have that luxury.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I feel very lucky to be able to do that.
So I want to dive into a couple things. Okay, so we just started talking recently. We kind of bumped into each other in the classroom setting, and you were talking about you doing teacher training, and I was like, I have this idea. And I want to give full credit because I know Jen Lee, she listens to my podcast. She was one of my students in my teacher training, and she's like, what would be really cool is if you did a podcast from someone at the start of teacher training and then someone at the end, that same person at the end of teacher training, to talk about what it was going to be like. Yeah. And so as you were saying that, that random idea popped into my head. I was like, this is a perfect opportunity.
I'm so excited.
I want to talk to you about that. But first, let's dive into really brief what you do. I know you have your blog. It's called On Adulting. And I love the word adulting so much.
I know.
I am a big fan of if you try to see me in general, I like to yell out, I need an adult. And it's like, if I can't get a wrapper undone, or I don't know, sometimes I'll be in the grocery store and there's too many kales and I don't know which one I'm supposed to pick. I will be like, I need an adult.
That is my life motto. I know. Growing up is very hard.
Only God knows how I made it this far.
Literally. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I could give just a quick background on me. I actually started my career, I'm 25, so just a couple of years ago, in finance back in New York. And at the time I actually had listened to one of your recent podcasts about this idea of purpose, and it resonated with me so much because at that time I was really lonely and sad and kind of looking for what my purpose in life was. And I knew it definitely wasn't working behind a desk in finance, analyzing lots of numbers. So I actually turned to writing, and I turned to running actually at the time was my mode of movement. And it really helped me kind of process and understand and what was going on in my head at that time and why growing up was so hard. Yeah. And I started my little blog at the time was just like an email with a bunch of friends and family trying to assess like why I was so happy before and why I wasn't happy now and what I could do about it. And I started blogging. I switched into a new job about a year and a half later in the philanthropy world, which was much more aligned with what I wanted to do, or so I thought, in my life. And at that time, I felt like far enough removed from that low point in my life to be able to make sense of it and kind of share with others who might be going through that. So,
Sure.
fast forward a couple of years later, and I recently moved to San Francisco. With my boyfriend, and I am now doing blogging and consulting and a lot of different things in my as a full-time role right now, which is really, really fun.
Nice. And how often are you posting stuff, or what all can be found on adulting? Like what are you known for?
Totally. Yeah. So the blog is about growing up in a mindful and happy way. So on there, I talk about everything from how to stay present in your
Yeah.
everyday life when you're surrounded by everyone else's best versions of themselves
Yeah.
to like what foods are good for immunity in this like weird flu season. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
really just like a fun, honest, real place where people can like figure out how to be their best versions of themselves.
That's awesome. I love that. And it's
Yeah,
also it's so easy to get caught up in how do I say it? I've been talking about this. It's so easy to get caught up on like what you're supposed to look like and how
totally.
skinny you should be, and
Mhm.
the 5 tips to losing weight. And I'm not saying that that's bad stuff, but I think there's too much of that stuff and not
Yeah.
enough. How can we better ourselves from the inside out?
Totally. And it's interesting because I'm actually launching a podcast soon called Challenging the Collective, and it's all focused on this idea of should versus could. Like
Yeah,
it started with me moving to San Francisco, another like crazy weird time in my life that made me feel really confused, but was this kind of like ground for growth. And it made me start to question like I've been following other people's ideas of what I should be doing or should be putting into my body or should be like following for this idea of success. And what is my version of that? And like, what could I do?
for sure.
Um, so I think that's a really interesting point. But yeah.
So let's from on adulting, let's move into so teacher training. I
Yeah.
like how first off, so here's what I have in mind. I want to
Yeah.
know where, like, really beginner's mind, like where were you at going into this? Let's just start there. Like where were you at being like, okay, I think I want to do a teacher training?
Totally. Yeah, great question. I start in about 3 weeks. So,
Good luck.
I know
By the
I'm like
way,
really trying to remind
before I
myself of that now.
before I let you go further, like my friend Alyssa actually taught me this, but
Mhm.
teacher training, I don't call it teacher training anymore. I mean, I do, but like I refer to it mentally. It's life training. It is not like
Mm.
yoga teacher training. It is life training. And I honestly, I think before you get your driver's license, you should have to do 6 months in a fast food a restaurant or a restaurant. You should have to
Totally.
do 6 months in retail, and you should take a teacher training. Like it should be a requirement that you do those 3 things so that you know how to deal with life.
I love that so much. Yeah, I feel like I am hitting a quarter life crisis. I need some life training.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah. So as I mentioned before, I've been a runner for my entire life. It's been kind of my place to figure out what is going on in my head. It's kind of my reflection zone.
Hmm.
Um, and after doing a couple of marathons and all this crazy stuff, it really took a toll on my body. And I had always viewed yoga as my like off day
Right.
for a very long time. And it was like, okay, I'm going to go stretch and like have some fun. But I never viewed it as my like passion. And actually, about 2 years ago, I really started to supplement, I guess, my running with yoga. And it really provided me with that space to move, but also to think and reflect and start to like ask myself these questions. And it just felt so much better in my body. So I started to listen to it. And I
Yeah.
think I've been kind of reflecting on why yoga has really pulled me in and what I'm so excited about. And I think that for me, running was such a like individual sport in a way where it was just me questioning these things. But what I've loved about being part of this yoga community and why I'm so excited to like do teacher training and get that even more and then hopefully pass it on is that like you're questioning and thinking about these things together. Like everyone in the room has come there for some reason to start to like think a little bigger than themselves and really start to dig a little deeper while
Yeah.
moving. So I hope that that's what I get out of it. And I'm really excited.
So, okay, this is the start of you getting ready to go into teacher training. You're
Yes.
excited. That's one part of it. Let's break that.
Yes.
Let's break that down. What do you? Oh man, I hate to say what are your expectations because we should never have expectations, but let's just do it
Yeah.
to fuel the fire. What, what do you think it's going to be like?
Mm. So I have chose to do it a little differently than most people probably are doing it, which I think will probably lead to different things. So I'm doing it in a month intensive. So I'm going to be there every day from 8:30 to 5:30.
Oh my God,
Um,
wait a minute. I didn't
yeah.
even know you were doing the 1 month. So we get to do the recap faster than 4 months. This
Yes.
is going to be
I
brilliant.
so it's going to be very intense. So my expectations are excited, but also like a little scared because
Yeah,
um, I've never done something that intense for like 4 weeks in my
right.
life.
Right.
And I know that it's going to not just be a physical thing, but also such a mental and spiritual journey in a very short amount of time. So I'm really looking forward to it, but I'm really like intrigued to see what I'm going to come out of this like very intense period of time for me. So
What
I don't
would
know
you,
if that answers your question.
that's perfect. That's perfect. What would you say, if any, what fears do you have about this?
Mm,
Ooh. And
yes.
I'm telling you, girl, let's just get it all out. Like, and seriously,
Cool.
like, just don't hold back. The
Yeah.
rawer, the better. I want to hear, like, some really, really, just get into it.
Yeah. Okay. So, my first fear that comes to mind is, and I think that this always is something that, we hear about in yoga classes and even when we're practicing by ourselves, but is this fear of like living up to my expectations in my head of what I can do versus what like my body and mind are telling me that I'm going to do. And I deep down am like an extremely competitive person.
Hmm.
So typically I try to like let that go a little bit in my everyday life. Um, but I know that being in a class every day with the same people doing things that's going to like really push me to my limits is scary because I don't know how it's going to turn out. So
Yeah.
I'm scared about, I mean, I'm trying to like prepare myself mentally beforehand just to say like this is what you make of it, and it's totally about you. But one of my fears is that I'll start to like compare,
Yeah.
or like with myself and then with others.
What sorts of questions do you have going into this?
Mm,
Like inquiry, like what's it going to be like? Is it going to be, I don't know. What are you thinking about going into it? Like what's your thought process questioning wise?
yeah. So one thing that I'm actually really excited about is like taking my learning of yoga and the history of it to the next level because I feel like something I the reason, just to back up as to why I decided to do a training in the first place, was that I got to this point in my practice where I like would leave every class wondering how the teachers knew like what poses were good for, like why twisting was good for digestion or things of that nature, or like what these words meant. So I'm really excited to like answer those questions and
Mhm.
start to learn more about like the history and the background of yoga and how it's like transpired across so many years and generations and like cultures, I guess. So
Hmm.
that's one of my biggest questions.
Here's another question. I should have asked you this first because
Yeah.
anytime I run a teacher training, this is always my first question. Do you think you want to be a teacher?
Yes, I do.
Why?
Yeah, no, I think that it's interesting because I've always loved mentoring and coaching, like in any role that I've had. And as I've watched my favorite yoga teachers, I've noticed that they use those same qualities and they come out of class like maybe not even having moved, but feeling so good that they've been helping others kind of get to this next point in thinking or spirituality or even like achieving a pose.
Hmm.
So, I'm really excited to kind of flex those skills of mine in a different way because I've never like taught a movement based class. I've mostly just like coached in terms of career and things of that nature. So I'm super excited to do it and start to like give back to others. That's my biggest motivator.
What do you think? Like when you're, if you, okay, so going into it, going into this teacher
Mhm.
training, saying, all right, I'm going to become a teacher. I want to teach movement based stuff. What do you think this is going to look like now in combination with on adulting?
Mm,
If any,
yeah,
are you thinking like you're going to marry these two things and like
totally.
because I feel like what you're doing is you're a teacher already. I don't know if you
Mhm.
know now right now. Let me give you this unsolicited advice, and I mean this, and I wholeheartedly, but recognize right now that you are already a teacher.
Mm,
You choosing to go into this path and to take this training, you're already a teacher. You've already
yeah,
chosen that, so you're there. So one, kudos on that. That's freaking
I
awesome.
love that.
But two, you're offering already this yummy, juicy, like, how do we, again, embrace that inner greatness, with the
Mhm.
right things that we put into our bodies and how do we better ourselves? And again, becoming your highest self. How do you think these two things, if any, like, how are they going to come together?
Yeah, totally. And I've been noodling on this quite a bit, especially as I started to set some goals in the new year. And back in New York, I started to hold these sessions with people in real life, which was my first foray into this world of teaching, but not using movement. So they were these sessions called passion therapy, where we brought all these random people together and just connected about like what does passion even mean and how can you find passion in your everyday lives, and we did a bunch of like thought-based exercises.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm super excited because I want to bring that way of thinking into teaching yoga and kind of combine them both through my like community I've started to build with on adulting. So I hope that that all comes to fruition. It's a lot of big goals, but I only think that doing this yoga training and teaching is going to kind of help spread that message.
Well, and know too that it may be a big, a big goal, but you without those goals, we wouldn't have the movers
Yeah,
and the shakers and the teachers that we have now. And I don't think that's like good. The bigger the better, I think.
totally.
I think,
Yeah.
go for it and push and know that, anyone out there that's thinking about doing a teacher training for me, one, it changed my life, but two, like it just gives you so many tools and techniques and, and places to question. Teacher training is like a great, I like to say it's like the shit starter, It's like it's the thing that's going
That's
to
what,
make you think about things because you dive into so many different aspects and it's like it's a buffet. You get to like go
yeah.
and pick and choose and then you go and you eat more knowledge of this stuff and then you're like full on that and then so you go and you eat some more knowledge on this stuff and you figure out which flavors are really yours and where you want to dive deeper into. It's a fucking magical experience.
Yeah.
Like a game
I'm
changer.
I'm so excited, and that makes me really happy that you say that because as I reflect on that, I realize that this is kind of coming at a really great point in my life where if I did this when I was like in this midst of questioning everything in my life back when I was like hadn't started on adulting yet and I felt very confused, I feel like that would have been really overwhelming to add to that. But right now, I feel so much more grounded in those questions that I can like handle them and start to answer them in a thoughtful but like not crazy way. So
Yes.
we'll see what happens after. But
Something that's like actually super meaningful and like it makes
yeah,
sense to you. Yeah.
exactly.
All right. So we're
Yeah.
going to recap this really quick. You going
Yes.
into teacher training, you feel excited.
Yes.
You feel like you're ready to go and teach afterwards. Like that's something that you want to do.
Totally.
And you feel like you're probably going to marry these two things together.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Exactly.
Everyone take note. Everyone
Oh,
take note because
exactly. Hold me to it. We'll see what happens in like a month.
I'm serious. This is, I mean, again, big kudos to Jen for coming up with this idea, and way cooler that you're doing the month-long intensive because
Yeah,
this is gonna get nitty-gritty at the
I
end.
know. Literally end of February. Everyone look out because I might be a new person.
Well,
Actually.
I'm excited,
Um,
Katina, for all of your growth. I'm excited to see you through your process. As I would offer it to anybody while you're going through it. Please, feel free to reach out like at any given point.
yes.
And I'm going to link everything about on adulting obviously into the show notes. But people like you guys got to check out this blog. It's really, really, really
Amazing.
super cool. And it's like myself, I'm like a big fan on like let's get away from the bigger we're not enough, we're less than things and come into the things like, okay, how can we meet ourselves where we're at today?
Hmm.
Because we're beautiful and we're perfect the way we are. And it sounds super cheesy, but the truth is we're doing all right, and so just take it for what it is, and all the other stuff, just cut it out because it's not worth it. So I
Exactly.
love that
I
on adulting
wholeheartedly
provides that.
agree.
Yeah. Do you have anything
Yeah.
else? Anything else to add on for the listeners before we catch up with you in about a month?
No, I guess I'm just super excited and I will leave it open for anyone who is wondering about this or kind of wants to catch up with me about my experience offline. Like, definitely feel free to reach me through Instagram or through my email or the kind of question area on my blog. I'm so happy to talk about this and like share my experience very honestly, but I'm sure you'll be getting that through my blogging too. So.
Awesome. All right,
Awesome.
y'all. Well, until the next Yogi Misfit session, this is Katina and Danny saying peace out.
Bye. Thank you.